I often find myself thinking about how different my life could have been if my parents hadn't divorced when I was 7. Back then, I was just Jessica Thompson, a regular kid living with my mom and dad in a cozy house they'd bought together. I remember those early years being filled with simple joys, family dinners, weekend trips to the park, and bedtime stories read by both parents. Everything changed when they split up. Dad moved out but left us the house and made sure we were taken care of financially. He paid enough in alimony that Mom didn't need to work, which she seemed pretty happy about. A year later, Mom met Steve. He seemed nice enough at first, always bringing candy when he visited and trying to make me laugh. They got married pretty quickly, and soon after, my half-sister Cindy was born. That's when things started to change. Steve began giving me these looks, like I was somehow in the way. He'd make little comments when Mom wasn't around, stuff like, "Don't you miss your dad, or wouldn't you rather live with him?" I was 12 when I overheard the conversation that would change everything. "Look," Steve was saying, his voice low but firm, "I got that promotion at work. My salary's nearly doubled. You won't need to work, or Jessica's child support." "But that money helps," Mom replied. "It pays for a lot. Come on, Sarah. We both know Jessica would be better off with her father. Plus, wouldn't it be nice to just focus on our family? On Cindy?" The way she didn't hesitate before agreeing is something I'll never forget. "You're right. I'll call Mark tomorrow about taking Jessica." I stood there in the darkness, my hand pressed against my mouth to keep from making a sound. The glass of water I'd wanted lay forgotten as I processed what I'd just heard. My own mother was trading me away because she didn't need my father's money anymore. Looking back now, I wonder if they ever knew I heard that conversation. Mom acted like she was doing me a favor when she told me I'd be moving in with Dad. "You'll have more opportunities there," she'd said, as if she wasn't just getting rid of me because I'd become financially inconvenient. Dad welcomed me with open arms, no questions asked. He'd set up a room for me in his apartment, painted it my favorite color, and filled the bookshelf with all the series I loved reading. That first night at his place, he sat on the edge of my bed and said, "I'm sorry things worked out this way, kiddo. But I want you to know something, you'll always have a home with me. Always." Those words became my anchor in the years that followed. While Mom busied herself with her new family, barely checking in except for obligatory holiday calls, Dad was there for everything: school plays, parent-teacher conferences, the time I got my heart broken by my first crush. He made sure I got into a good private school, encouraged my interests, and never made me feel like I was a burden. When college applications came around, he sat with me night after night, reviewing essays and helping me research schools. I still remember the day my acceptance letter from Princeton arrived. Dad's eyes were welling up as he read it. "You did it, kiddo," he said, pulling me into a bear hug. "I always knew you would." College was expensive, but Dad never complained. "Your education is my priority," he'd say whenever I brought up the cost. Those 4 years flew by, and before I knew it, I was graduating with honors and had landed a job at one of the top consulting firms in the city. I rented a nice apartment downtown, not too far from Dad's place. We had dinner together every Sunday, just like we had since I was 12. He'd ask about my work, and I'd tell him about my latest projects. Sometimes we'd just sit in comfortable silence, watching old movies like we used to when I was in high school. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. The diagnosis came out of nowhere. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months, the doctors said. They were optimistic. Dad only made it 4. I was 28 when I lost him. The last few weeks were brutal. I took leave from work to be with him in the hospital. One night, near the end, he squeezed my hand and said, "You were the best thing in my life, Jessica. Never forget that." After he passed, I discovered he'd left me everything: his beautiful apartment in the city center and $700,000 in his accounts. I couldn't even think about the money. I just missed my dad. A month after the funeral, my phone rang. I almost dropped it when I saw Mom on the caller ID. "Jessica?" Her voice was hesitant. I heard about your father. I'm so sorry. I hadn't heard from her in years. Thanks, I managed to say. I know this might not be the best time, but Steve passed away too, recently, heart attack. She paused. I've been thinking about you a lot. Maybe it was grief making me vulnerable, or maybe I just wanted to believe people could change, but I found myself agreeing to meet her for coffee. One coffee turned into regular visits. I met Cindy properly for the first time since she was a baby. She was 21 now, bouncing between job interviews and seemingly directionless. Mom was working as a cashier at the local supermarket, a far cry from her days of not needing to work. I started visiting them several times a month. I told them about my travels, weekend trips to different states, my vacations in Europe. I always brought them gifts, designer clothes for Cindy, nice perfumes for Mom, little luxuries they couldn't afford themselves. It felt good, in a way, being able to share my success with them. It became a routine. I couldn't show up at Mom's place empty-handed. Even if I was just dropping by for a quick coffee, I'd feel guilty if I didn't bring something. The local mall became my regular stop before any visit. Cindy especially loved the clothes I brought back from Europe. Her eyes would light up every time I pulled out something from my suitcase. "Oh my God, Jess, is this really from that boutique in Paris?" she'd squeal, holding up whatever designer piece I'd brought her. At first, I enjoyed their reactions. Maybe I was trying to buy the affection I never got as a kid. I'd carefully pick out things I thought they'd like, a cashmere sweater for Mom, a leather handbag for Cindy. Then one day, I decided to ask what they actually wanted. "Oh, I couldn't possibly," Mom started, looking down at her coffee cup. "Maybe just some new towels from Target?" Cindy was equally hesitant at first. Maybe some drugstore makeup?" But something shifted after that. The requests started getting bigger, more frequent. Mom went from asking for towels to texting me entire shopping lists. "Hey honey," one text read. "When you're in Milan next month, could you pick up that Gucci bag we saw online? And Cindy really needs new winter clothes, Prada would be nice. Oh, and we're running low on groceries." I stared at my phone, my stomach turning. The lists kept getting longer, more demanding. It wasn't just luxury items anymore, they expected me to cover their basic expenses too. One evening, after receiving yet another lengthy list, I decided enough was enough. I drove to their house, determined to have a serious conversation. "Mom, Cindy, we need to talk about these requests," I said, sitting at their kitchen table. Mom shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "The lists, the constant asking for things. It's getting out of hand." "Oh, come on," Cindy rolled her eyes. "It's not like you can't afford it. You're loaded." "That's not the point," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I have money, but..." "But what?" Cindy interrupted. "You're just going to hoard it all while your family struggles? You've got that fancy apartment, you're always traveling, and you can't help out your poor family? You're rich. Your dad left her all that money, and you're being selfish." I felt my face getting hot. Selfish? That money came from the parent who actually wanted me. The one who didn't trade me away when I became inconvenient. The room went dead silent. "It's my money," I said finally, standing up. "And I'll decide how to spend it." "Real nice, Jess," Cindy spat. "Real nice way to treat your family." I walked out, slamming the door behind me. For the next month, my phone stayed silent, no calls, no texts, no lists of demands. Part of me was hurt, but another part felt relieved. After a month of silence, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Jessica, honey, could you come over? I need to talk to you about something important." There was something in her voice that made me worry. Despite our recent argument, I found myself driving to her house that afternoon. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table when I arrived, looking more subdued than usual. Cindy hovered nearby, her face uncharacteristically serious. "What's going on?" I asked, taking a seat. Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "I've been to see a doctor, Jessica. It's my knee. They say I need surgery right away, a total knee replacement." My stomach dropped. "How serious is it?" "Very," she said, her voice trembling. "The doctor says if I don't get it done soon, I could end up disabled. I wouldn't be able to work anymore." I thought about Dad, how quickly things had gone downhill after his diagnosis. How helpless I'd felt watching him suffer. "The thing is," Mom continued, "the best specialist for this kind of surgery is in Arizona. They've got a spot open, but..." She paused, glancing at Cindy. "The whole thing, surgery, hospital stay, rehabilitation, it's going to cost $70,000. $70,000? I repeated. "I know it's a lot," Mom said quickly. "But Cindy will come with me to help during recovery. The whole treatment and rehabilitation will take about a month." I sat there, memories of Dad's last months flooding back, the hospital corridors, the beeping machines, the helpless feeling of watching someone you love suffer. I couldn't let that happen again, not if I could prevent it. "I'll help," I heard myself say. "But I can't give you the whole amount at once. I can give you half now, $35,000, and the other half when I get the hospital bill." Mom's face darkened. "But I need all of it up front." "The hospital." "Mom," I interrupted, "that's all I can do right now. I need to be smart about this." She started to protest, but Cindy put a hand on her shoulder. They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "Actually," Mom said, her tone shifting, "let me call the hospital. Maybe I can arrange to pay in 2 installments." She left the room with her phone, and I heard her voice drifting from the hallway. A few minutes later, she returned, looking relieved. "They said it would be fine," she announced. "We can pay half now and half after the surgery." The next few days were a blur of preparations. I transferred the first $35,000 to Mom's account. A week later, I helped them pack their bags and drove them to the airport. A few days after Mom and Cindy left, I was sitting in my home office reviewing some work documents when my phone buzzed. The name that popped up made me smile, Rachel Martinez, my best friend from elementary school. We'd known each other since we were 6, but after I moved in with Dad, we mostly kept in touch through social media. Recently, we'd started meeting up again for coffee and catching up on lost time. "Hey, Rach, what's up?" "Jess," there was something odd in her voice. "I need to ask you something weird. Did you know your mom and sister are in Europe?" I laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. "What? No, they're in Arizona. Mom's having knee surgery." "Yeah, that's what I thought too, but..." Rachel paused. "My sister just showed me these photos that Cindy sent her. They're definitely not in Arizona." My phone pinged with incoming messages. With each new photo that loaded, I felt like I was being punched in the gut. There was Mom, looking perfectly healthy, posing in front of the Trevi Fountain. Cindy taking selfies outside designer boutiques in Rome. Mom's sister Angela and her daughter Emma lounging by a private pool at what looked like an expensive villa. Each photo was timestamped, yesterday's date clearly visible. "There's more," Rachel said hesitantly. "My sister said Cindy's been bragging about the whole thing. Apparently, your mom bought one-way tickets for everyone, herself, Cindy, your Aunt Angela, and your cousin Emma. They've rented some luxury villa for a month, and they're shopping at all these high-end stores and eating at fancy restaurants." I sat there, staring at a photo of my mother, my supposedly surgery-bound mother, sipping wine at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Italian countryside. The $35,000 I'd given her for medical expenses was being spent on a European vacation. I spent the night tossing and turning, looking at those photos over and over. How could they do this? How could they lie so brazenly, taking advantage of my concern about Mom's health? They'd played me, using my memories of Dad's illness to manipulate me into giving them money. The next morning, I called Mom. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. how did the surgery go? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, it went great. The doctor said everything went perfectly. I'm already starting rehabilitation. I gripped the edge of my desk, knuckles turning white. The casual way she lied made me feel sick. That's wonderful, I said, my voice dripping with barely contained rage. I'd love to talk to your doctor about the procedure. Could you put him on? There was a slight pause. Oh, he's very busy right now, sweetie. Besides, there's no need to bother him. Look, I need to go. They're calling me for physical therapy. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there, staring at my phone, a wave of memories washing over me. Mom giving me away at 12 because she didn't need Dad's money anymore. Mom only reaching out after Dad died and left me his estate. Mom sending me shopping lists, expecting me to fund her lifestyle. And now this, the ultimate betrayal. I decided to play along with their charade, calling Mom every day to check on her recovery. Each time, she had a new excuse ready. The doctor's in surgery right now, honey. He's at a conference today. He's seeing other patients. He's off duty until tomorrow. It was like watching a bad play, where the actor keeps forgetting their lines and making up new ones on the spot. I started keeping a list of her excuses, partly out of anger, partly because I couldn't believe how ridiculous they were getting. Mom, I said during one call, trying to sound concerned, maybe we could do a video chat? I just want to see how you're doing, make sure you're comfortable in the hospital. There was a rustling sound on the other end, probably her covering the phone while she consulted with Cindy about what to say next. Oh, sweetie, I look terrible right now. All swollen and bruised. Plus, the hospital Wi-Fi is awful, keeps cutting out. I could hear Italian pop music playing faintly in the background. Really? I pressed. That's strange for a top medical facility. Well, you know how these things are, she said quickly. Listen, I need to go. Time for my physical therapy. The next time I called, I decided to try a different approach. Mom, just send me the hospital bill directly. I'll wire the remaining $35,000 to their account. No, she said it too quickly, too forcefully. Then, softening her tone, I mean, that's not necessary. Just send it to my account, and I'll handle everything with the hospital. They know me here now. After that conversation, I stopped calling. Let them sweat a little, I thought. Sure enough, a week later, Mom's number appeared on my phone. I watched it ring, imagining her growing panic as she realized the money might not be coming after all. Then came the text, Jessica, the hospital is demanding payment immediately. They're threatening to send the bill to collections. Please, we need the money right away. I took my time responding, waiting several hours before typing, no problem, just forward me the bill from the hospital, and I'll take care of it immediately. Silence followed. 3 days of it. I knew they were scrambling, trying to figure out what to do next. Then an email arrived in my inbox with the subject line urgent, hospital bill attached. I opened the attachment and almost laughed out loud. They hadn't even tried to make it look legitimate. The letterhead was blurry, clearly copied from some other document. The date was from 6 months ago. The hospital's address showed California instead of Arizona. And most tellingly, the payment details section listed Mom's personal bank account. I stared at this pathetic attempt at forgery, feeling a mix of amusement and deep sadness. I photographed a stack of $100 bills I'd withdrawn earlier that week, arranging them fan-like on my desk. Got your bill, I wrote back, attaching the photos. Sending you money. My finger hovered over the send button for just a moment before I pressed it. Game on, Mom, I thought. Let's see what story you come up with next. My phone rang less than an hour after I sent the photos. Mom's name flashed on the screen, and I took a deep breath before answering. Jessica, her voice was shrill, panicked. What's going on? Where's the rest of the money? We've been waiting. Drop the act, Mom, I cut her off, my voice ice cold. I know exactly where you are, and it's not in any hospital. What are you talking about? You're in Italy, at a villa. Shopping at designer stores and eating at expensive restaurants with Cindy, Aunt Angela, and Emma. The line went silent for a moment. I could almost hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how to spin this. How did you? She started. Cindy sent photos to Rachel's sister, who showed them to Rachel, who then sent them to me, I said. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I've seen everything, the villa, the shopping trips, all of it. You used my father's death, used my grief and guilt about not being able to save him, to scam me out of money for a vacation? Another pause, then her voice changed. The fake concern disappeared, replaced by defensive anger. Fine. Yes, we're in Italy. I knew you'd never give us money for a vacation, but why shouldn't we get to travel too? You're always going somewhere, Paris, London, New York. Meanwhile, Cindy and I can barely afford groceries. That's not fair. Not fair? My voice was shaking now. Not fair is being 12 years old and hearing your mother trade you away because she didn't need your father's money anymore. Not fair is having that same mother show up 16 years later, not because she misses you, but because your father died and left you money. We can talk about all that later, she said quickly. Right now, we have a serious problem. We don't have money for tickets home, and we still need to pay the villa rental. Everyone needs to get back to work, we can't lose our jobs. Please, Jessica, we need that other $35,000. In that moment, I finally saw everything clearly. Nothing had changed. She was still the same woman who'd given me away when I became financially inconvenient. Only now she wanted me back, or rather, she wanted my money back. That's your problem, not mine, I said flatly. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then I went through every social media platform, every messaging app, every possible way they could reach me, and blocked them all, Mom, Cindy, Aunt Angela, everyone involved in this scheme. Sitting there in the silence of my apartment, the apartment Dad left me, I felt something shift inside me. The last lingering hope that my mother might actually care about me, might actually want a relationship with her daughter rather than her daughter's money, finally died. 2 weeks after I blocked everyone, my grandmother called. I almost didn't answer, but Grandma had always been different from Mom, more honest, more genuine. Jessica, honey, she said, her voice worried. Your mother called me. She says she needs $15,000 urgently. I don't have that kind of money, but I thought maybe you. Grandma, I said gently, let me tell you what really happened. I told her everything, the fake surgery, the Italian vacation, the scam to get my money. With each detail, I heard her sighs getting heavier. Oh, Jessica, she said finally. I'm so sorry. I had no idea Sarah would do something like this. Don't worry about them, Grandma, I assured her. They got themselves into this mess, they can get themselves out. As it turned out, I didn't have to wait long to find out how they managed. Rachel called me a few days later. Have you seen what Cindy's doing on social media? She asked. I hadn't, since I'd blocked them everywhere. Rachel proceeded to fill me in. She's running this fundraiser, claiming her wealthy sister abandoned them in Italy without money to get home. She's painting you as this heartless rich person who left her poor family stranded in a foreign country. I felt a familiar surge of anger, but this time it was mixed with something else, amusement. How's that working out for them? I asked. Well, Rachel said, they spent almost 2 weeks trying to raise the money. They had to sell all those designer clothes and bags they bought. Apparently, the villa owner was threatening to call the police because they couldn't pay the rent. And get this, they all nearly lost their jobs because they stayed way longer than their approved vacation time. I shook my head, thinking about how their grand European adventure had backfired spectacularly. A month later, Grandma called again with an update. They're finally back, she said. But Jessica, it's a mess. Your Aunt Angela isn't speaking to your mother anymore, Apparently, Sarah demanded she help pay for the trip after everything fell apart. And she and I had a terrible fight because I couldn't give her money for tickets home. She actually accused me of choosing you over her. I'm sorry you got dragged into this, Grandma. Don't be, sweetheart. Sometimes people need to face the consequences of their actions. After we hung up, I walked to the window of my apartment, Dad's apartment, and looked out over the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. On my desk, a stack of travel brochures lay waiting. I was planning my next trip, this time to Greece. The old me might have felt guilty about traveling while Mom and Cindy struggled. The old me might have invited them along, tried one more time to build the relationship I'd always wanted with them. But that me was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who finally understood that some relationships aren't worth saving. Dad's last words to me in the hospital echoed in my mind, "You were the best thing in my life, Jessica. Never forget that." I hadn't forgotten. And I finally understood that I'd been lucky to have had one parent who truly loved me, who put me first, who taught me my own worth. Mom and Cindy could keep their schemes and manipulations. I had my father's love, his legacy, and most importantly, my self-respect. These days, my life is peaceful. I travel when I want, work hard at my job, and spend time with friends who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. Sometimes, I hear bits of news about Mom and Cindy through Grandma. They're still struggling, still playing victims, still looking for their next mark. But their drama doesn't touch me anymore.